My name is Claire Donovan, 34 years old. For most of my life, my unofficial job title in the family was the responsible one. Not eldest daughter, not big sister, not even just Claire. No, my role was the designated grown-up, so everyone else could afford to fall apart. My younger sister Sarah was always the golden child. My parents doted on her like she hung the moon. When she wanted ballet lessons, they found the money. When she wanted a destination wedding, I watched my mom cry about the cost and then quietly wrote a check to make it happen. My brother Liam spent college betting on sports he didn't understand and blew through his savings. I bailed him out. When Dad's business went under, I covered their mortgage for 6 months so they wouldn't lose the house. I did it all quietly, telling myself that's what family does. You step up when you're needed. You take on more than your share because you're the one who can handle it. So when my mom called last month, voice dripping with that particular blend of theatrical gratitude I knew too well, I already knew what she wanted. "Claire, sweetheart, you know Sarah's baby shower is coming up, right?" she asked. I was at my desk, staring at a spreadsheet, the glow of my monitor reflecting off the half-empty mug of coffee beside me. "Yeah," I said cautiously. "She's due soon, right?" "She really wants it to be special," Mom went on. "You know how much this means to her. First baby, all her friends coming. We just want to make sure it's perfect." There it was, the lead-in. They never asked directly. They painted a picture, then waited for my guilt to connect the dots. I leaned back in my chair. "What are you thinking?" "Well," she said, "we found this lovely venue, and the caterer Sarah wants, oh, it's just gorgeous, honey, little tea sandwiches, a mimosa bar, custom cupcakes with the baby's name, all that Pinteresty stuff. It's just a bit more than we can manage right now." A bit more than they could manage. I knew exactly how that sentence was supposed to end. I could have said no. I could have asked why Sarah and her husband couldn't scale back, why everything had to be perfect instead of reasonable. I could have pointed out that my student loans didn't magically pay themselves just because I wore a blazer to work. Instead, the old script kicked in. "All right," I said quietly. "Just let me know what you need." 2 days later, Mom texted me an itemized list. Venue deposit, catering quote, decorations, favors, and miscellaneous extras. The total, just under $10,000. I stared at the number for a long moment. $10,000 for a party. A lavish, Instagram-worthy party. Sure, but still. It was my sister's first baby. I told myself this was a family milestone. Maybe, for once, it would also be a moment where they actually saw what I did for them. I wired the money that afternoon. "Sent," I wrote back. "Hope it helps. I'm happy for her." I didn't get a thank you call, just a thumbs-up emoji from Mom. 2 days after that, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. I wiped my hands on a dish towel. I'd been halfway through cooking dinner and opened it. "Hey," it read. "Thanks for the contribution. Just wanted to let you know we're keeping the shower small, so you're not invited. Just send a gift." I read it twice, convinced I was missing something. A joke, a winking emoji, anything. Nothing. My chest tightened. My first instinct was to type back. "Are you serious? Wow. 10 grand, but not a chair at the table?" I actually started typing. "You know that hurts, right?" Then my phone buzzed again. This time it was Mom. "To be honest, Claire, you can't buy your way into this family," her message said. "You either belong or you don't." I sat down at the kitchen table because my knees didn't trust themselves. It was such a casual, cutting thing to say, tossed off like a one-liner, but it hit me like someone had emptied a bucket of ice water down my spine. I thought of the nights I'd stayed up late doing overtime so I could send my parents money without my own bills bouncing. The weekend I drove 4 hours each way to watch Sarah's kids so she could have a break, and then listen to her complain about how tired she was when she came back from her spa day. The way Mom always introduced me as our Claire, she's the responsible one, with a half laugh, like my entire personality was a utility. And now, with one text, she'd clarified it. I wasn't family. I was a wallet. I closed my banking app and set my phone down, palms flat on the table. I stared at the wood grain for a long moment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock on the wall. I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't anger. I'd been angry with them plenty of times before. Anger was hot, loud, reactive. This was different. This was cold, clear, final. I picked up my phones again, but not to answer them. First, I opened the account for the trust fund I'd set up paperwork for but hadn't funded yet. Baby M's Future, the folder on my desktop still read. I had planned to start transferring money next month, building a cushion for my niece or nephew the way no one had ever done for me. I deleted my name from the documents, closed the file, closed the idea. Then I pulled up the online portal for the dealership where Mom's shiny new SUV had been leased. She'd begged me to co-sign because her credit was temporarily in rough shape, swore she'd handle the payments. I'd only agreed because she guilted me with, "I hate driving that old rust bucket. It's embarrassing when I pick up the grandkids." I called the customer service line. "Hi, this is Claire Donovan. I'm the primary on lease number." I read off the digits. "Yes, I'd like to terminate authorization for the secondary driver and disable use until further notice." The rep confirmed my ID, paused, then said cheerfully, "You know there's a remote disable feature if you want it stopped immediately." I thought of Mom and Sarah, laughing at that table, of the text telling me to just send a gift. "Yes," I said, "use that." When I hung up, the quiet in my house felt different. I didn't stop there. I dialed my lawyer's number and left a message about selling the lake house, the one I'd bought years ago, as a family retreat where my parents invited their friends, left empty bottles on the deck, and never once offered to help with taxes or repairs. That place had become a monument to my inability to say no. "I want to list it," I told my lawyer when he called back, ASAP. Then I set my phone face down on the table and let the silence sit. I didn't text Mom back. I didn't respond to Sarah. I didn't explain myself. They wanted me on the outside of this family? Fine. I'd show them what that really looked like. The next morning, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Missed calls, long, furious texts, voicemails that started indignant and grew more frantic. I ignored them. It wasn't until the pounding started on my front door that I set my coffee down and smiled. Through the glass panel beside the door, I saw them. My mom, face flushed, hair askew. Sarah, arms crossed over her chest, jaw tight, eyes blazing. They were banging on the glass so hard I briefly wondered if they planned to shatter it and crawl through like suburban zombies. I let them stew for another slow sip of coffee. Then I walked over and opened the door. "What the hell is going on?" Sarah snapped, brushing past me into the foyer like she owned the place. Mom followed close behind, clutching her purse strap like a lifeline. "Claire, this isn't funny. What did you do?" I leaned against the wall, keeping my posture relaxed. "Morning. What's the emergency?" Sarah shoved her phone in my face. "Why did you cancel the SUV lease? I was halfway to my appointment when the engine cut off and the screen said unauthorized use, like I stole the car." I almost laughed. I hadn't expected to enjoy that part so much. Mom cut in, voice sharp. "And why is the baby's trust empty? You told us you were setting one up. We relied on that, Claire." Ah, there it was. Not, "We were hurt by your silence." Not, "We're sorry about the text." Just straight to the money. "You both made it pretty clear I'm not really part of this family," I said evenly. "You don't want me around, so I stopped acting like your personal bank." Sarah's face flushed, and she shot my mom a wide-eyed look. It reminded me of animals cornered in a too small space, silently deciding which one would attack first. "You're being dramatic," Mom scoffed, folding her arms. "Family helps each other. That's what we do." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Really? Because last I checked, family doesn't take $10,000 from you and then tell you you're not invited. Family doesn't send a text saying you can't buy your way in right after they cashed your transfer." They both opened their mouths to argue, but I held up a hand. "Save it," I said. "I'm done being the doormat. You told me I can't buy my way into this family, so I'm taking your advice. I won't try." I watched the realization settle over them like a cold fog. They'd thought they were untouchable. They'd thought I'd always be there. They'd thought I needed them more than they needed me. They were wrong. After a long, tense silence, Sarah spat. "Fine. If you want to act like this, maybe we don't need you at all." I shrugged. "Maybe you don't. I guess we'll find out." They stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Outside, I saw them on the driveway, huddled together, fumbling with their phones, no doubt calling my dad, my brother, anyone who might restore the old order. I turned away from the window and walked back to my kitchen. My house was quiet, my bills were paid, my coffee was still warm. For the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar spread through me. Peace. I had no idea how quickly their carefully balanced lives would start to unravel without me propping them up. But I was more than ready to watch from a distance. By the end of that first week, I realized something important. They weren't angry because I'd betrayed the family. They were terrified because their safety net had finally snapped. It didn't take long for the ripple effects to reach the rest of the family. The first text I got was from my Aunt Linda. She lives 2 states away and usually only messages on birthdays or when someone dies. Claire, I don't know what's going on between you and your mother, but this isn't like you. Family is all we have. Don't throw it away over money. Call me. I stared at the screen for a moment, then set the phone down. Over money. As if 10 years of being everyone's emergency fund and emotional punching bag could be reduced to a single word. Next came my cousin Dylan, who hadn't responded to a single message of mine in over a year, but suddenly needed to talk it out. Hey, heard things are weird with your mom and Sarah. You okay? I know they can be a lot, but seriously, you're really cutting them off like that? I didn't answer him either. I wasn't interested in explaining myself to people who only remembered I existed when things got messy. The voicemail from my dad was almost worse because he didn't yell. He never yelled. He just sounded tired. Claire, it's Dad. Call me back when you get this, okay? Your mother's rattled. Sarah, too. I'm hearing things about the car and the baby fund, and I just want to understand what's happening. We need to talk. I didn't call him back. Not yet. Because I knew how that conversation would go. It would start with, I just want to understand, and end with, can't you just let this go for the sake of the family? The answer, for the first time in my life, was no. 2 days later, my brother called. Jake's name lit up my screen while I was in the middle of reviewing a project proposal. I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity won out. I hit accept. Hey, I said. Hey, he answered, trying for casual, failing hard. So, I heard about the SUV and the baby trust. Mom and Sarah are losing their minds. I noticed, I said dryly. He let out a low whistle. What's going on, Claire? What's going on, I replied, is that I got tired of being treated like a walking ATM. They pushed too far, so I shut off the tap. That's it. He was quiet for a second. I could practically hear him weighing which side to take. Jake has always been the fence sitter, just agreeable enough with each person to stay out of the line of fire. Look, he said finally, you know how they are. You probably just took it the wrong way. They didn't mean to cut you out. They just word things badly. Word things badly? I repeated. Jake, they took $10,000 from me and then told me I wasn't invited. Mom literally wrote that I can't buy my way into the family. What exactly did I misunderstand there? He sighed. You know, Mom, she says stuff she doesn't mean. Funny, I said. Because she meant it enough to double down when I didn't reply. Claire, he tried again, softening his voice, this is going to blow up. You're basically torching every bridge in this family. I looked out the window at my quiet, tree-lined street, at my tidy front yard, at the life I'd built on my own. Then I guess it's time for a fresh start, I said. There was another pause, then resigned. All right, but don't say I didn't warn you. He hung up. I set my phone down and felt lighter. Like every conversation where I didn't cave added a tiny piece to a spine, I was rebuilding from scratch. The next few days were more of the same, but louder, angrier. My aunt accused me over text of abandoning my responsibilities and being ungrateful for everything my parents had ever done for me, as if my entire adulthood hadn't been one long repayment plan for things I never asked for. My cousin sent a long paragraph about forgiveness and how holding on to resentment poisons you, which was rich coming from someone who still brings up a borrowed shirt from high school every Thanksgiving. Then came the real kicker, a call from Sarah's husband, Mark. The last time I'd seen him, he'd been standing next to Sarah in their kitchen, bragging about his new watch while I quietly loaded the dishwasher after her baby gender reveal. My phone rang on a Thursday afternoon as I was finishing up a report. I checked the caller ID. Mark. I considered letting it go. Curiosity won again. Hello, I said. Claire, he began, with that careful tone people use when they're trying to sound neutral. I don't want to get in the middle of this, but you need to reconsider what you're doing. There it was, right on schedule. Reconsider what? I asked. This whole cutting them off thing, he said. Sarah's a wreck. My parents are talking about stepping in to help, and honestly, it's getting messy. I leaned back in my chair, letting his words hang in the air. Claire, you there? He prompted. It's interesting, I said calmly, how I don't get any calls when things are going well. But the second I decide to stop funding everyone's life, suddenly everyone wants to talk. He cleared his throat. You know I've always appreciated what you've done for the family. But this is too far. They're panicking, and... Mark, I cut in. Maybe if they treated me like family instead of a bank, we wouldn't be here. I'm done being their backup plan. They're scared, he insisted. Think of the baby. Don't do this to your niece or nephew. There it was, the guilt card. You mean the baby whose shower I funded but wasn't allowed to attend? I asked. The baby they told me to just send a gift for? He didn't respond. I'm sorry they're feeling consequences, I said flatly, but that's not my job anymore. Claire, come on. Not my problem, I said and hung up. I blocked his number. That evening, I sat on my back porch with a mug of tea, watching the sun sink behind the trees, the sky bleeding gold into purple. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. A new text from Mom. You're being cruel. You'll regret this. Family always comes back together whether you like it or not. I stared at the message, felt a flicker of the old guilt twitch in my chest, the guilt they'd fed and watered my whole life. Then I deleted the text, didn't respond, didn't reread it. The storm had started. I had a feeling it was going to get much worse before it ever quieted. But for the first time, I wasn't standing outside trying to plug leaks with my bare hands. I was inside my own house, doors locked, watching the weather from a safe distance. A week after I cut them off, the cracks in their carefully curated lives started to show. It got back to me through the grapevine. The same messy string of half-truths and whispers that had delivered so much unnecessary drama over the years. Mark picking up extra shifts at his firm, suddenly too busy for the midweek brunches and date nights Sarah liked to post about. Mom calling relatives asking for a small loan until things even out, which sounded suspiciously like the script she used on me for years. Then, late one night, Dad called again. He never called twice, so I answered. Claire, he said, voice rough, like he hadn't slept. We need to talk. I looked at the clock, 11:38 p.m. Okay, I said, keeping my tone even. I'm listening. Your mother is in a bad place, he said. She's been reaching out to everyone she can. She says you've gone cold, that you're shutting her out, and I don't understand how things got this far. You don't? I asked. I know she said things she shouldn't have, he added quickly. She can be sharp. But you don't have to go nuclear. This is family, Claire. There it was again. That word. Their shield. Their excuse. I'm not going nuclear, I said quietly. I'm just stepping back and letting the fallout hit the people who created it. That's not fair, he murmured. Let's talk about fair, I countered. I paid for Sarah's wedding. I kept you and Mom from losing the house. I paid off Jake's gambling debt. I've bought more plane tickets and holiday groceries and last-minute crisis bailouts than I can count. And the second I stop paying, I'm suddenly cruel? He didn't respond. This isn't about one baby shower, I continued. It's about a pattern where I only matter when you need money. It stops now. There was a long, heavy silence. All right, he said finally, sounding older than I'd ever heard him. I hope you know what you're doing. For the first time, I replied, I really think I do. We said goodbye. I ended the call. For a moment, regret flickered at the edges of my resolve. Then I remembered the text. You can't buy your way into this family. I wasn't trying anymore. I was done shopping for belonging in a store that never had my size. The storm didn't just break. It detonated. 2 days after Dad's late-night call, I woke up to an email from my bank marked Urgent Fraud Alert. I assumed it was the usual, some phishing scam, another "we suspended your account" message sent from a sketchy Gmail address, but this one was real. I logged into my account, and there it was. Recent credit inquiries detected. Multiple attempts to open new accounts using your SSN. Applications denied due to credit freeze. My stomach dropped. There were only 2 people desperate enough and entitled enough to try something like that, and they shared my DNA. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the computer screen, sipping cold coffee while everything inside me rearranged itself into something sharp and still. When the anger came, it wasn't explosive, it wasn't loud. It was surgical. I immediately froze my credit with all 3 bureaus, called my bank, filed a report, then emailed my lawyer. Subject line, we have a problem. He called me 10 minutes later. His tone, for the first time since he'd represented me, held a note of impressed dread. Claire, they used your social security number. This isn't family drama anymore. This is felony identity theft. I know, I said quietly. And you didn't give them permission, he confirmed. No, I replied. I cut them off. They tried to take anyway. He exhaled slowly. The police may contact you. Be prepared. He wasn't kidding. The next morning, as I was washing a dish in the sink, my phone rang with an unknown local number. Hello, is this Ms. Claire Donovan? A firm voice asked. Yes. This is Officer Ramirez with the Financial Crimes Division. The words made something cold coil in my stomach. We need to speak with you regarding a potential case of identity theft. Would you be available to come in this afternoon? Of course, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Good, he said. And Ms. Donovan, thank you for cooperating. That tone told me everything. He already knew who tried to steal my identity. He just needed my confirmation. The police station was exactly what you'd expect. Sterile walls, fluorescent lights that made everyone look sick, and a faint scent of burnt coffee seeping through the halls. Officer Ramirez met me in a small conference room. He wasn't much older than me, maybe mid-30s, with tired eyes that said he'd seen more family implosions than wedding invitations. He slid a manila folder toward me. "Multiple credit applications were submitted in your name," he said, "both within the last week." I skimmed the documents. The same address, the same handwriting style, the same desperation disguised as entitlement. "Claire," he said gently, "your mother and your sister attempted to open these accounts." He let that sit for a moment, watching my reaction. I gave him none. "Normally," he continued, "people want to resolve these matters privately, but given the amounts involved and the repetitive nature of the attempts, this qualifies as felony fraud." He leaned back slightly. "The question is whether you want to press charges." I looked down at the folder, at the evidence of how easily they'd crossed a line I still hadn't fully processed. I remembered Sarah's text, "You're not invited. Just send a gift." I remembered Mom's message, "You can't buy your way into this family." I remembered every bill I'd paid, every debt I'd erased, every emergency I'd hauled them through. And then I remembered the silence, the lack of concern, the lack of hesitation when they excluded me after I funded their celebration. My jaw tightened. "I want to proceed," I said. He nodded, not surprised, not judgmental, just professional. "I'll need your signature on a formal statement," he said, sliding a pen across the table. I signed. Neat handwriting, no shaking. When I walked out of that station, something inside me clicked into place. It wasn't vindictive, it wasn't triumphant, it was release. For once, I wasn't rescuing them. For once, I wasn't cleaning up their disaster. For once, their consequences were their own. That evening, I got the text I expected, but still rolled my eyes so hard I gave myself a headache. "Jake." "What the hell, Claire? Mom and Sarah are in tears. They said you're trying to get them arrested. What is wrong with you?" I didn't reply, because nothing was wrong with me for refusing to be robbed. Nothing was wrong with me for choosing to protect the life I'd built. Nothing was wrong with me for letting adults deal with the aftermath of their own choices. 2 days later, my lawyer called again. "Claire," he said, "the police officially contacted your mother and your sister. They are being charged." He paused. "And I want you to know, you handled this well. You protected yourself legally, documented everything, didn't retaliate emotionally. This is how boundaries are supposed to work." For a moment, I felt something I hadn't expected. Grief. Not for them. For the version of me who spent years believing it would never come to this. The version who thought love and loyalty were currencies, not weapons. The version who truly thought someday they would appreciate me. But grief wasn't weakness. It was acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that the story had finally changed. The fallout was instantaneous. Sarah's social media went dark. Gone were the aesthetic brunch posts, the smiling pregnancy photos, the luxury SUV cameos. She'd curated an entire life online based on appearances, and now appearances were the last thing she could afford. My aunt sent another furious message accusing me of destroying Sarah's future, humiliating the family, and being heartless when she's expecting a baby. I blocked her, because her outrage didn't come from concern for Sarah. It came from losing access to me. My mother tried to spin a story to her church friends that I was overreacting to a simple misunderstanding. But the truth slipped through when people found out police had gotten involved. Dad called again. His voice was hollow. "Your mother is struggling," he said softly. "She didn't think you'd take it this far." "Dad," I said, "she committed a felony." He had no answer for that, just tired breathing. And then the most predictable thing of all happened. They lost their stability, quickly. Mom's credit was already shot. Without my emergency deposits and quiet payments smoothing over the cracks, the financial sinkhole widened fast. Dad's income couldn't float a house, medical bills, and Sarah's wedding leftovers. 3 weeks later, their home went on the market. Not voluntarily. My brother tried one last time to rope me in. He showed up at my office unannounced, eyes bloodshot, jaw tight, hands shaking with barely concealed panic. "Claire," he said hoarsely, "you can't do this. You're ruining Mom. She's losing the house." "No," I said, meeting his gaze evenly. "She lost the house the moment she built her lifestyle on the assumption that I'd always fix everything." "You're destroying this family," he hissed. I stepped around him, opened the office door. "No," I corrected. "They destroyed this family when they decided my only value was my bank account." He didn't respond, didn't argue, didn't apologize. He just left. And for the first time in my life, I didn't try to stop him. A week after Jake's unannounced office meltdown, The dust from my family's implosion didn't settle. It thickened. It coated everything. It seeped into conversations I hadn't asked for, into voicemails I didn't listen to, into text bubbles from numbers I didn't recognize but immediately knew were flying monkeys in the family's latest campaign. They were spiraling, and somehow it was my responsibility. At least that was the narrative they clung to. But I was done starring in a story where I wasn't even respected as a supporting character. The official criminal charges hit on a Wednesday. Identity theft, fraudulent credit applications, attempted financial impersonation. The police moved faster than I expected, maybe because the amounts were high, maybe because the digital trail was sloppy, maybe because, once again, my mother and Sarah made the mistake of assuming family was an invisible shield against consequences. News travels fast in families like mine, faster than common sense, slower than accountability. By Thursday morning, I was getting calls from relatives who had ignored me for years. My Aunt Denise called first. Her voice trembled with righteous fury. "Claire, how dare you do this to your mother? She is humiliated. She was crying when she told me what you did." "What I did?" I repeated. "You got her arrested. Your sister too, over a misunderstanding." "Oh," I said calmly. "So when someone uses my social security number without my consent, that's just a misunderstanding?" She faltered. "Well, your mother said—" "My mother lies," I said plainly, especially when trying to protect Sarah. Silence. A stunned, breathy silence. "You've changed," she finally whispered. I smiled to myself. "Good," I said. "I worked hard for that." I ended the call before she could gather more indignation. Blocked her. Blocked her backup number. Blocked her email while I was at it. One less voice in the choir. Then came the message from my cousin Veronica. This one almost made me laugh. "Hey girl, I know things are messy right now, but we're all adults here. Maybe you should be the bigger person. You know Sarah's expecting. It's not a good look to fight with a pregnant woman." A good look. There it was, the family slogan. Appearances over truth. Image over integrity. Facade over accountability. I deleted the message without responding. And then I blocked her too. The list was growing. But Friday brought a different kind of message. Dad again. He didn't yell. He never yelled, which somehow made it worse. "Claire," he said, sounding exhausted in a way I had never heard from him before, "I need to talk to you without judgment, without your mother's version or Sarah's version. Just father to daughter." I paused, then said quietly, "Okay?" He exhaled shakily. "Your mother is unraveling," he said. "She can't sleep. She keeps saying she didn't mean for any of this to happen. And Sarah, she's terrified. She's pregnant and scared and—" "So am I snapped before I could stop myself. There was a beat of silence. "Dad," I said, voice steadier now, "they stole my identity. They tried to open lines of credit in my name. They risked my financial future. They risked my home. They risked everything because they assumed I'd never fight back." "I know," he said quietly. "I'm not defending them. I'm asking you if there's any way to stop this before it goes too far." "It's already gone too far," I said, "and they took it there." "But we're family," he whispered. That word again. Family. The shield. The excuse. The manipulation. I felt something inside me solidify. "No, Dad," I said, "we were family until they decided my role was the one with the open wallet." "Claire, I'm not doing this anymore. They made their choice. Now I'm making mine." He didn't argue again. He just sighed. A long, tired sigh that sounded like a surrender he never expected to make. We hung up, and for the rest of the night, the phone stayed mercifully quiet. The quiet didn't last. Not even 48 hours. Saturday morning, a certified letter was delivered to my mailbox addressed in neat handwriting. I knew before opening it who it was from. Mark. Of course. I tore the envelope open over my kitchen counter. His letter was exactly what I expected. Desperate, transactional, and drenched in fake diplomacy. He offered to compensate me for any financial damages. He offered to repay the $10,000 from the shower. He even promised to ensure Claire's mother doesn't involve herself in Claire's finances again. He wrote it like he was negotiating a ceasefire between nations. He ended with, "Let's solve this privately. There's no need for public embarrassment." Public embarrassment. Their biggest fear. Not remorse, not accountability, not amends. Image. Always image. I folded the letter gently and dropped it into the trash with leftover coffee grounds and a crumpled paper towel. Then I blocked his number too. But the real blow came on Monday. That's when I learned, through a neighbor back home, that my parents' house, the same one I once saved from foreclosure with 3 months of emergency transfers, was back on the market. This time not voluntarily. Mom had apparently overextended herself again, counting on me, always counting on me. to refill the gaps. Without me, the bills piled up. The payments stopped. The bank stopped waiting. They were losing their house. Part of me, some small, quiet part, still shaped like the daughter I used to be, felt a pang of guilt. But the rest of me remembered the text, "You can't buy your way into this family." The entitlement, the manipulation, the brazen attempt at financial theft. They hadn't just cut me out emotionally. They'd tried to use me until there was nothing left. Losing the house wasn't my doing. It was the natural consequence of decades of living beyond their means because they assumed I'd always catch them on the way down. And I wasn't standing beneath them anymore. Jake showed up at my office the next day. Angry. Frantic. Jaw clenched so tight a vein stood out along his temple. He barged in before my receptionist could stop him. "Claire," he said, voice trembling, "you can't do this." I set down my pen calmly. "Do what?" "You're ruining Mom," he said. "She's losing the house. She's barely sleeping. Sarah is on the verge of a breakdown. You're destroying this family." I looked at him for a long moment. Not with anger, not with pity. With clarity. "No, Jake," I said softly but firmly. "I'm not destroying the family. I'm refusing to destroy myself for it." He blinked. I stood up, walked around the desk, and met his eyes. "They destroyed the family when they decided my only purpose was to fund it," I said. "They destroyed it when they stole from me. They destroyed it when they used me, excluded me, and then acted shocked when I finally said enough." He swallowed hard. "But—" "I'm done," I said. "I'm done holding the weight of everyone's irresponsibility. I'm done being the safety net. I'm done being the scapegoat. I'm done." He didn't have an argument left. Just stunned silence. Then he turned, walked out, and slammed my office door so hard a framed certificate rattled on the wall. My receptionist peeked in, eyes wide. Should I call security?" I exhaled. "No," I said, "he won't be back." And he wasn't. 2 weeks later, the lake house sold for a handsome profit. The same lake house they treated like a free Airbnb. The one they trashed every summer. The one they used to brag about as if they paid a single cent toward its upkeep. Every ounce of equity went to me. I used part of it to take a 2-week vacation to the Maldives. I spent mornings drinking coffee on a deck overlooking crystal blue water, afternoons snorkeling with sea turtles, evenings reading novels in a hammock while the sun stained the sky pink and gold. For the first time in years, no one needed me. No one asked for anything. No frantic texts, no guilt trips, no emergencies. Just peace. Pure, unbothered peace. When I came home, I made one final decision. I moved. New city, new number, new circle of friends, new life. And I blocked the entire family on every platform, changed my email, closed the last joint account they'd ever have access to. Then, sitting in my new apartment, quiet, sunlit, entirely mine, I took a deep breath. In, out. I felt something expand in my chest, a kind of freedom I didn't know existed. A kind that only comes when you stop choosing people who never chose you.